Well, it is another Sunday, and call it another session in the rendezvous. Last Sunday, I promised you that for a number of editions of this program, we'll be treating the challenge of security. Last Sunday, it was the Fulani question. But this Sunday, we're taking Nigeria's security question from a totally different perspective. If you watch the newscasts all over the country and newspapers and read them, you hear a group has given quick notice to one group to leave Nigeria, to leave their section of the country. And that group has given another group quick notice. Some people are being labeled as not worthy to live in some part of the country. The federal government seems overwhelmed. The security agencies seem to be overstretched. Just last week, Senator Boniface sponsored a debate in the Senate. Boniface is from Ondo North. And he said that the country was having the prospect of a civil war if nothing was done. That was a very ominous statement by a Nigerian senator. The Senate debated it, and all they did was to ask the executive to do something, ask the president to do something. But beyond and above the president and institutions, is there any other thing the Nigerian citizens, groups, governors, district heads, emirs, chiefs, the intellectual community, the media, is there anything we should be doing to bring ourselves back from the brink and begin to be realistic in tackling our national security challenge? Sheikh Gumi went to meet the bandits, and he came back. Let me synthesize, not his words, that there's need for dialogue and amnesty. There have been roaring condemnation from all manner of politicians and groups. But what is the alternative model? Again this Sunday, I have Dr. Hakeem Ahmed. Of course, you met him last Sunday, the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum, an intellectual, an academic, and a Fulani man. I do not know why I need to put that one in this edition of the program. Dr. Hakeem, you are welcome to the conversation again.
Thank you very much.
This Sunday, Nigeria's security problem, it seems to be throwing up in all dimensions and in all locations, and the country seems to be unraveling. Are you afraid?
Absolutely. I'm terrified. I'm terrified because my generation, you ahead of us, and me, we saw it all. And we are beginning to see signs that we can repeat some of the worst mistakes we made in the past. A few weeks ago, I participated in a very important webinar titled Never Again, 51 years after the Civil War. Very responsible Nigerians, very knowledgeable Nigerians. And when it came to my contribution, one of the few things I said was, look around us. All the people talking were in our 60s and 70s. Any Nigerian who is 50 now does not know about the Civil War, was not born before the end of the Civil War. They don't know wars. They don't know about conflicts of that magnitude. They don't know what Nigeria was. All they have inherited is a country where we relate to each other by insulting and abusing each other and by blaming each other for what we are. This is a great country, but who is there to narrate that story? Even if we are not so great now, who is there to remind this generation that is bitter and alienated and frustrated? Who is there to say, hey, listen, there was a great country, Nigeria, and it's still the same country, we can fix it. The reason why I asked you when you said to me, am I worried? And I said, I'm alarmed, is because I can see some of the missteps that we took in the 60s and in the 70s repeating themselves. How a Nigerian can say to another Nigerian, leave, or we'll kill you, or if we see your type, we'll kill you. And there's a law in the land, and nobody does anything about it. And then in another part of the country, people say, okay, well, if you send our people, we will send your people out as well. You're playing with the foundations of a nation who has communities all over this country, who need peace and security in order to continue to live anywhere they choose. Under the Constitution, Nigerians can live and pursue lawful livelihood unmolested. We're dealing with that foundation. And you begin to think out the foundation, you deal with the building. And that is where we are. Why I'm even more worried is not so much that the leadership doesn't say the right things. It doesn't say anything at all. When it does, it just simply plays to the gallery. Our governors, either they are lamenting their impotence, we don't have police, we don't have soldiers, we don't have intelligence, which is true, which is the reason why we need to restructure this country. They are all sometimes ordinary little thugs and people who know how to tap into popular sentiments have already pulled the carpet from under their feet, and now they have become followers and not leaders. And they cannot say no to anybody who says, let's go and attack these people, let's go and attack these people, because it's an unpopular position to take. When leaders abdicate and they leave the initiatives to citizens, some of them very irresponsible people, then you know we are beginning to have the outlines of a major crisis. We saw this in Rwanda. We saw this in parts of Somalia. And it's very difficult for people to understand this, that history can repeat itself. And we're going in that direction. And unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with politics. Our politics has become so bitter, it has become so weaponized, that the only way in which you get political power is to push to the extremes. We have lost the elite, the statesmen, the intellectuals, leaders. You've mentioned all of them. Where are they? Who is saying to Nigerians, be careful, you're pushing this country to the limit. Be careful. There are other ways in which we can resolve some of these problems. We don't need to go this far. We don't need to go this way. No one is talking. And you mentioned in your introduction, Dr. Gumi, Sheikh Gumi.
Yes.
This is a cleric who took upon himself to walk into very dangerous territory, to go and meet where these very heavily armed bandits and kidnappers live. And they met him. Just the pictures alone, if you see them, they are frightening. How anybody unarmed will walk in and sit with these people, nothing but a few copies of the Quran and a speech to deliver to them, to remind them that they are Muslims, and on the day of judgment they will pay for this, and that there are options to this kind of life, and to listen to them. There are very, very few of these initiatives. Who is talking? Are the governors talking to each other? Governors in one part of the country say, no, we don't want open grazing. Fine, no problem. You can say we don't want open grazing. But in the meantime, what do you do with people who are involved in open grazing? Do you now say, but we will create a time space before you either transit into another option? Or do we say we've given you 1 week to leave? What happens if at the end of that 1 week they're still hanging around because there are too many, the logistics can't be met? Are they at the mercy of the community? Are they at the mercy of anybody who wants to take the law into their hands? What is happening with all these people in the eastern part of the country going around and saying to Fulani, you must leave, or we don't want to see Fulani, we don't want to see Fulani? What happens if the other part of the country also begins to say, we don't want to see this ethnic group or an ethnic group? So I am alarmed. And to be honest with you, I'm amazed that we can descend so rapidly to this low level. And what is even more worrying is that all the options ahead of us are difficult.
Let us begin to take some of these difficult options one by one. Let me start from the center. if the federal government, if the president notices that the country is tottering, the country is about to unravel, he has certain responsibilities. Beyond applying coercion, using the police, using the military, issuing orders, there needs to be a change in the national conversation. Some people have said, call a meeting of the governors and political party leaders and the president. Some have said, call a national dialogue. Some have said, intellectuals should band themselves together and begin to give the nation models. What should the president, in your own estimation, in your own opinion, be doing now in the face of this situation?
He has to do a lot more than he's doing, because currently he's not doing much. And that is not consistent with principles of leadership and responsibility. I'm sorry to say this, but it's the truth. When a few weeks ago we began to hear things, some rumbles, governor in Oyo State, some people had gone to attack Fulani people, killed them, burnt down a few places. Then Ondo, the governor says there's a forest reserve, he doesn't want anybody there, he's giving them 1 week to deal with that, and there's a big uproar. The president, with all the paraphernalia of intelligence and other inputs into law and order and security, ought to have known that those events could actually create additional sources of crisis. It was a telling point when you begin to tell large numbers of people, whether they were criminals or not, leave this place, completely leave. If you say they are breaking the law, and I can show you the law, you have no business being in the forest. He's right. If the law allows him to ask anybody living in the forest, but it shouldn't be just Fulani. If I was advising Governor Akeredolu, I would say, sir, don't even mention anybody who is living in the forest illegally should leave. Yes, it should leave. Now, then, if he has good advisors, people would say to him, sir, don't rush into giving a deadline. Because the problem with deadlines is that you raise people's hopes that those forests will now be cleared of every criminal. Well, here we know what we're talking about is Fulani people. And what happens at the end of the week? Assuming they can't go out or they don't go out, what happens? Do you have the policemen to go in there and flush them out? And what are they going to use to get rid of these people? Can the community go in there and do it themselves? Are they free to do that? And that was exactly what we saw. So we began to see a trend, and then Southwest governors got together and started saying, well, we were going to ban night herding, no staying in forest, those kind of things. It was a trigger other people were waiting for. And then the fire got lit somewhere else. And now, you can imagine, in a day, if you check if you're the type who surfs on social media, the most scary thing that you will see is so-called videos that shows killings and mutilations and attacks on Fulani people. Or people panicking that Fulanis have blocked roads and they can't go forward. Somebody somewhere is undermining the fundamentals of the security of this country. The president cannot be indifferent to these things, shouldn't be indifferent to these things. So why hasn't the president summoned governors and security chiefs to one place? We sit with them. Certain events are occurring. I know you're governors, you have a lot of problems. I know you don't have policemen, but commissioners of police are under you. There are military formations under you. But let's discuss this. What can you do? What can I do? What can we do together? How is this problem going to be resolved? And then they can talk to him. They can tell him what they think will be done. And then he can tell them where it is. But at all costs, this is a country run under a constitution. We must never compromise the law, and we must never compromise the rights of any citizen. If you allow that to happen, in one part of the country, The law protects you. In another part of the country, you are not protected by the law. Then we're going into serious problems. So the president can improve the manner in which he relates with governors, gives them some confidence, help them in one or two areas. Then you can lower the temperature. Then they know everybody is on the same page. But we haven't seen that. We haven't seen a president lead. Governors are therefore deciding what is best in their own interests. You have 36 governors, for goodness sake, in this country. If every governor or even...
comes up with his own model.
Yes, even if you have collections of governors and they put their heads together and say, oh, okay, we're going to, as far as we're concerned, there is no, this will not be allowed, this will not be allowed. Last week, state governors in the north, 19 state governors met. And the next day, the banner headline in the Daily Trust was, Northern governors are concerned about reprisal attacks. That is a very, very, very dangerous thing. I'm assuming they must have had strong grounds to believe it. They must have picked it up because they have many sources. They must have picked it up from popular rumblings. They must have heard it from credible security detailing. Reprisal attacks. Reprisal attacks is the last thing this country needs. So if you have this information that people in the north are planning reprisal attacks against southern communities living in the north because southern communities are expelling northerners, in the name of God, what happens? Shouldn't somebody rush to the president and say, Mr. President,
say something or do something?
Yes, sir, we are very worried. We are northern governors. Fulani people are coming into the north in large numbers. They are raising tension. They're raising the people are.
And they are coming back with stories.
Yes, and we have irresponsible people in the north the same way we have them in the south. There's no group that is special. If you can threaten and kill, other people can threaten and kill. But what did we see? We saw resolutions, some of them good, some of them just the type of thing that you say because you have to say something. But they say that reprisals are a perfect possibility. That is very serious.
But Ahmed, let me tell you another thing some of my colleagues in the media have been reporting. There has been the argument that with this insecurity challenge rising, the president ought to consider a national conference. Because it is the politicians who can douse the tension if there's a consensus, if there's a measure of understanding. The way it is now, there's so much desperateness that the meeting ground, I don't know where to find it yet. I have not read of it yet. But it appears that that word, national conference, doesn't sit well with the presidency. Is there any other word you can use for the president to create a national conversation that will draw all of us to consider this kind of situation we are in?
I'll be honest with you. I don't think this president will ever contemplate something called conference. He's conservative. He has hard and fast rules about words that are used, and he's made up his mind. He thinks the only way forward for this country, if he wants to change anything at all, is to go through the National Assembly, get it to convince them that this needs to be changed, then bring it to him, convince him that he agrees with it, then take it to 36 states of the Federation, convince them, at least 24 out of 36 of them, that that is the way to go, and then enact it into law. Anything that you need to change. We're talking about, when you say national conference, you're talking about a collection of Nigerians who will be brought for a purpose, presumably that they will look at the Constitution, they will look at certain things that are working, certain things that are not working, and recommend where they can be fixed within the constitutional framework. Let me remind you that two presidents attempted this. President Obasanjo did that. He was a democratically elected president, very powerful president.
Very.
But he didn't feel uncomfortable about creating a national conference. He called a national conference and said to them, take this constitution, look at it, and tell me what you think needs to be done. I will take it and I will give it to the National Assembly. It was torpedoed because some people said it had a third-term agenda in it. President Jonathan tried it, and he got a large number of Nigerians. He said, take this constitution, take anything, look at it, give me your recommendations. It was torpedoed because they said there was many things wrong with it, including bad faith and another hidden agenda in it. So national conference in itself is not illegal. President Buhari can summon a national conference. But President Buhari has made it very clear the kind of national conference he recognizes is the one where if you want to change anything in the Constitution, you go to the National Assembly. He's right, that is what the Constitution says, but it doesn't mean that the input into the process cannot come from a national conference. What people are saying is the process by which the National Assembly amends the Constitution. The process doesn't allow for serious amendments that can address security issues, the structure of the country, the way the economy works, and the way we relate to each other. That's why you hear about all this restructuring. 90% of the rhetorics you hear coming about restructuring suggests that it should take place outside
of the constitutionally prescribed process.
Yes, not outside, not necessarily outside, but that don't leave it just to the politicians in the National Assembly to decide for us. Now, in fairness to them, they say, no, we are not the ones deciding. You bring your suggestions to us. And most people will say, no, if we give you these suggestions, we know what you will do. You've done that many, many times. All you do is you'll take the ideas, remove 95% of them, and take 10% to the president, who will remove 3% out of the 5, take it to the state, they will remove 1% out of the 2, and the country will end up after 4 years with just 1% of the Constitution amended. That's useless. Given the current challenges we face, the Federation is not working for anybody. There's something seriously wrong with the amount of power and resources that we put in Abuja. In a federation where you have 36 federating units and one huge center that controls so much power, it's wrong. If it wasn't wrong before, now we can see it. Now we have governors who have serious security challenges to do, and they're relying on people that they just give uniforms to wear, called Amoteku or Eastern Security Network. For goodness sake, how do you run the security of a country like this? So even if we just reduce the issues to 3 or 4, let's deal with the issues of security. Can we have state police? Let's deal with the manner in which the powers of the Federation can be devolved to the states. Yes. Let's look at this issue about citizenship and indigenship, which is antiquated. A few months ago, the Northern Elders Forum went to the South-South and Southeast. Following the NSAS protests, northern communities, like all other communities, were brutalized very badly. And a few of them called us and said, come and let somebody come and see us. Because no one, not northern leaders, not the presidents, nobody said a word to them. And we knew they were badly brutalized. So we went and we sat down with them and we met them and we met the governors. We met the governor of River State. We met the governor of Enugu State. After we met with the community, it was a very successful. For the first time in more than 50 years, northern communities living in the southeast and south-south saw northerners coming to them to say, sorry, we had what happened. How are you doing? What problems do you have? And the governors were very constructive. They were very welcoming. They allowed us to talk and they told us what they can do and what they've done and what they will continue to do. But the point of this was, we met northerners there whose grandfathers were born in the East. Grandparents were born in the East. The only time they left the East was during the Civil War. Immediately the Civil War finished, they went back. An old man told us, and we saw this story over and over again. He said, if I go back to the north, I wouldn't know where to go. You see this, and he showed us a whole collection of people. He said, these are my children. They speak Igbo better than Igbo people here. Because they were born here, they grew up here. Now, there are many problems. They tell us we don't belong here. But we don't have anywhere in the north. We don't know anywhere. Our great-grandfather came here. So this is our home. 2, He says, oh, 7 or 8 of his children are all university graduates. They can't get a job. You know why? Because their birth certificate will say Newi, for instance. Some hospital in Newi. State of origin will be Jigawa. Okay? So, there's a job in Abia.
Yes.
He can't get it because he says state of origin is Jigawa. If he goes to Jigawa, they'll say, where's your birth certificate? And he will say Newi. Yeah. They'll say, no, this one is an Igbo man just because you speak fluent Hausa. Go away. And we have thousands of people like that in the north as well. So this kind of thing doesn't make sense. The Nigeria of today should not have this kind of antiquated nonsense. If a Nigerian lives or is born in a place, he or she should have the right to say, this is where I want to claim. And there should be no restriction at all in terms of what he gets or doesn't get. There are many things we need to change. But you asked me the question, why wouldn't the president call for a national conference?
Let me change the name to a national conversation.
What do you do with the conversation? When we finish conversing, we'll get up and leave what we conversed here now. Seriously, we are conversing. But seriously, it's a very serious issue. We converse. I belong to about 4 or 5 very serious-minded groups. We talk about this country. We talk about what we can do to change it. What is missing are 2 things. What are missing are 2. One, we need a bigger platform where like-minded Nigerians will come. When we finish abusing each other, eventually we'll sit down and we'll talk. And sometimes we abuse each other because sometimes even these educated, sophisticated, enlightened people, they still come with this mentality that, hey, you are northerner, I'm an easterner, I want out, I want restructuring, you don't want to be restructuring, you are the ones who is causing the problem. Don't worry, we'll go through that. But in the end, we will realize this country, if it fails, it falls on everybody's head. There are people who think they will be better off if they are not part of Nigeria. They are making a terrible mistake. This is not, I'm not saying this because I want Nigeria to continue. I do want Nigeria to continue as a united country, a country of opportunities, the kind of country that will give my child an opportunity to get a job and not to stay for 4 years at home without a job. But there are conversations going on. There is a momentum growing. Now, the problem really is that this kind of momentum will find difficulty in being accommodated within the existing framework that says, bring your ideas and suggestions to the National Assembly. There are people who don't have faith that the National Assembly initiative can deliver the kind of things that the country needs. There are others who don't think that politicians, these kind of politicians, have a right to decide for Nigeria what it needs to do. There are even fringe opinions of people who say, the National Assembly is a creation of the very constitution we are trying to reject. So why would we go to the National Assembly, which is a creation of the constitution? We don't want this constitution. We want a different constitution that we will design. And then you ask the question, well, how are you going to implement it, sir?
Ahmed, let me go back to the security question because I'm going to be unfair to you. If you look at Nigeria's security architecture today, I do not want to describe how the military, to my mind, has been misused and abused. But if you look at Nigeria's security architecture today, do you think it can deliver on the expectations of Nigerians with regard to security?
No.
What are the
Absolutely. You are asking if we sustain the current structure?
Yes.
No, it won't. For instance, policing has virtually disappeared. It collapsed a few years back. Now, after the NSAS protest, we don't have policing as a vital governance institution. There's none. What can police do? What does the police do? What do they do? Ask any citizen. If you ask him if there's a problem, you send police. He says, no, we want soldiers. Because police can't do anything. Unfortunately, this is the perception. You need to rebuild the police institution completely. Completely. You need to expand its numbers, you need to improve its capacities, you need to improve its professional standards, you need to improve its remuneration, you need to improve its morale. You need to give it a completely different character. Right now, there is no policing. The military is overstretched. It cannot win a single war because it's fighting too many wars. It's not its fault. You are walking around and the wind is carrying your clothes, tearing your clothes, and you're almost naked. Doesn't that tell you something that maybe it is time to either find shelter and sit down, or find cloth that is a little bit harder
cover
that
your
can
nakedness.
resist? Yes, cover your nakedness. They can resist this. That we keep going, and we keep going, and we become weaker and weaker and weaker as we keep going. So there is no way in the world the current security structure. Also, you need to address decentralization of policing and other security agencies. A nation of 200 million people. Now, you can't give every community its own police. You can't give every little ethnic group its own police. But you can create systems that complement each other and that allow power at certain levels to exercise some influence in the manner in which communities are policed. We need to address that. That is absolutely essential. The military itself, if you think, it's not just a numbers issue. The president, as a commander-in-chief of the armed forces, is not doing his job well. He appoints service chiefs or removes them and puts others, and then just lets go. It's not enough. It's not an accident that the Constitution gave the president the role of president and commander-in-chief. It means literally that they will take their instructions from you. You will hold them accountable. If they are delivering, they stay. If they fail to deliver, they go. Now we've been fighting the Boko Haram insurgency for 10 years under 2 presidents. This president removed Jonathan's service chiefs because they said he failed to fight. They failed Boko Haram, and he tolerated another service chiefs for 6 years. Remove them only after there's the huge national outcry that maybe you need to remove the service chiefs to see if we can get an effect. Now we have new service chiefs. But they won't do anything if the president maintains this tendency to say, I've given you a job to do, I'm not going to keep an eye on you. Go and deliver. Go and fight this. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces has a definite and specific role to play. He must be more actively involved in the security of this country. And this is all part of the security structure. But overall, we need to create a political environment that has influence over the security structure. Security is a function of politics. So there needs to be an elite consensus. First of all, that Nigeria can actually fail because its secure foundations are weak. And it's up to us, the elites, to get together and say, what can we do to reinforce these weak foundations?
That's a political
Yes,
dimension
and you
to
need
it.
that. You need that. If you leave it to the politicians alone, the politician just wants to exploit weak points to get power.
Win election.
Yes, and then when he moves on, he doesn't reinforce those weak. He doesn't amend those weak points. He leaves them.
If I leave them for another day.
Yes,
To win
only he leaves
election
them
again.
to exploit them, and they come back to haunt him. In 1999. 1999.
Okay, 1999, yes.
You know the genesis of Boko Haram. People were saying they started as foot soldiers of a governor. 2009, they started as foot soldiers of a governor. If your politicians are not thinking on their feet, you don't have politicians that think properly, and they are always one step ahead of crime or subversives, then you have a problem. Let me give you a story. When Boko Haram started, for 2 years after the military had arrested Muhammad Yusuf, late President Yar'Adua gave the shoot-at-sight order after 3 or 4 days of intense violence in Maiduguri. But before then, Muhammad Yusuf was becoming more and more of a problem. The military asked for shoot-at-sight order because the police had lost control of Maiduguri. So the military asked for shoot-at-sight order. I was a permanent secretary then in Yar'Adua's government. I knew what happened. And the president gave the shoot-at-sight order. And the military went to town, shot a lot of people. Some of them Muhammad Yusuf people, maybe some of them were not. They arrested Muhammad Yusuf, who was then the leader of Boko Haram. Interrogated him for 2 days, videoed it, And when they got all the information they needed, they handed him over to the police. What did the police do? They promptly shot him. His supporters went underground, disappeared for a while, and everybody relaxed. They thought, that's it, we finished these people. They won't come back. They came back, hardened, more bitter, more organized, armed. For almost 2 years, they had only one demand. I know this because I was a member of the committee appointed by President Jonathan to dialogue with Boko Haram. And we met with a lot of the senior levels of them. They had only 4 demands. For almost 2 years of the beginning of Boko Haram, only 2 demands. 4 demands. 1, prosecute the people who killed our leader. And at that time, they were detained here in Kuje. Prosecute them. We can't have our leader shot in cold blood. That means they even believe in the laws of the country. Number 2, stop arresting our wives and children. When you go looking for us, you get us, you pick our women and children. It used to hurt them. Stop it. Number 3, the Markaz, which is the place where Muhammad Yusuf used to have his house, had been abandoned in Maiduguri, and people were using it to ease themselves on it. And you used to hurt them. They said, rebuild it. You demolished it. Rebuild it. And 4, we are Muslims. We just want to be left alone. We won't fight you, don't fight us. But don't interfere in our faith, in our religion. These were the demands of Boko Haram. And I'm telling you honestly, if the government had acceded to them or sat down and negotiated with them, we would not have had Boko Haram. But what happened? We came back, we were very eager. We said to the government then, these were the demands of Boko Haram. And we believe these were real. And they were the same demands that they gave President Obasanjo when he went with Senator Shehu Sani to see them. It didn't change. They didn't do anything about it. You know why? Because some people make more money from a war than from peace. So they bungled it. They bungled it to a point where Boko Haram lost faith in the sincerity of the Nigerian state. They didn't believe that negotiations were going to be there. Literally, our committee was just wound up without achieving a single result. And Boko Haram became more emboldened and more emboldened. So you need a thinking leadership that is on its toes. Now Nigeria is facing so many security challenges. You have an insurgency that's still fighting the Nigerian military and winning only because they have not been defeated. Now you have banditry and kidnapping in the southwest. And then of all the things that can happen on top of this, now you have a country quarreling and asking whether we should even stay in this country at all. There are people who are saying, no, let the Fulani go. If Nigeria will finish because of them, let it finish. This kind of glib talk about a nation. And people don't consider the consequences. This is the point I was making when I was saying that 50 Nigerians who are under 50 don't know anything about the war. And that is very sad because they haven't read the history either. Or they've read the wrong history. They glorify war. They think Biafra is a great thing. It's a great thing. We want to be Biafrans. And if you ask them, can you tell me 5 things about Biafra that you know? They won't. They will tell you, oh, that means we're outside Nigeria. Is that the end? Is that the end of it? So you think if you're outside Nigeria, it's hallelujah, everything will be fine? You're going to be the same people, you know. You won't change because you now have a new flag and a new leadership and a new country. It's going to be the same people. Is every Igbo man, a saint? And he's not a saint only because he's in Nigeria now, but when he becomes a Biafran, he becomes a saint. And there are all these kind of rhetorics are all over. There are northerners who are saying, look, to hell with it. We will not stay here and take everything negative because we look like the custodians of the unity of this country. We too want to go. We don't want to live with these people. This is what they say. We don't want to live with them. We want our own country. Now, if you want to excuse this on the grounds that, oh, these are uneducated people, they don't know any better, the staple they're fed on is social media. What about the elite? What about the people who knew what the war was? Who knew how we got to where we were? How we got out of it? What about the people who know what is strong about Nigeria? What needs to be done to fix? You don't hear them. The ones you hear now are the people who realize that the ground has shifted from them and they are now chasing the rabble. They are the ones now following everybody and saying, kill, 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 kill. We don't want this, we don't want that.
But Ahmed, this is just to cap this conversation because my producer is giving me a signal, but this is important. We have looked at the internal variables: poor leadership, lack of consensus, the absence of weighing in by those who ought to weigh in, overstretched military and absent police force. Some people say that Nigeria's problem, security problem, really, is not just home-brewed, that there are external interests stoking the crisis because they think that it's not in their interest for Nigeria to be a stable, progressive, and developed country. Have you heard that?
I've heard that many times. And the reason why I don't really give much credence to this is because that's exactly what leaders are supposed to consider in every day. There will always be enemies of Nigeria. This is the biggest country in Africa, potentially the richest country in Africa, potentially one of the richest countries in the world. We've got everything to be rich. Everything. We've got the land, we've got the resources, we've got the human capital. We have the potential to be the richest country in the world. There are people who want their hands on what we own, we're abusing. There are people who don't want a strong country like Nigeria existing.
So they keep us busy chasing shadow and rats.
Well, I don't, in my life as a civil servant, I worked in many parts of the government, including foreign affairs. I was a permanent secretary there, along with other places. I hear a lot of these things. What I say to people is Nigerian leaders should always be aware of this, always. And when you know that there is somebody always looking at your door when you leave your house, when you leave, if you know what you're doing, you lock the door twice. You lock it twice, because that guy may be looking to see your movement. And you take precautions, you stop. Why? Ask a question. People say, oh, too many Fulani herders, foreigners. This Fulani that is there is not foreigners. Why if they're here, and they're here to maim and harm and rape and ban, what about the Nigerian state? Should the Nigerian state take steps? We closed our borders, but we didn't stop these foreign Fulanis from coming in. We're still part of ECOWAS. Why don't we take steps to amend the protocols on movement of persons and goods? What are we doing to secure this country? If your enemy wants to hurt you, you don't submit to that enemy. You take steps to minimize your vulnerability to the enemy. That is why we need good leadership. Of all the things in this country that is needed right now, believe me, the best, the most important is leadership.
Leadership, Dr. Ahmed, I want to thank you, but I won't let you go without asking you, do you think that the 2023 election will hold?
I hope so. But it would hold if the country still holds together, if politicians stop using 2023 as a political weapon against each other, if the population do not see any value in democracy because they are unsafe, they are insecure. If we want 2023 election to hold, if we want Nigeria to survive 2023, this is the time to fix a lot of the things we are doing wrong.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, a communications gentleman, an academic and intellectual, the spokesperson for the Northern Elders Forum, and the biggest qualification, a Fulani. We've been conversing for 2 weeks running. Let's hope that nothing comes in between this conversation, but we bring it to you no matter what happens. My name remains Mwabos Njoku. Dr. Hakeem, thank you for coming to the conversation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me for 2 weeks. I'm very grateful.
Great. Let's meet again next Sunday. My name never changes. It remains Mwabos Njoku. Good afternoon.